Told many people I was Native, white, and African. Then I took a DNA test. Now I feel like a fraud, like a part of my life was a lie and I don't know how to come back from that. This is literally one of the most widespread family legends in the United States. Maybe you've heard it too. For generations, a lot of families have passed down this story, especially families in the South, which we'll get to. But what if the story wasn't just a misunderstanding? What if it was a survival tactic or a way to cover up something that society wouldn't accept? So today we're going to uncover why millions of Americans believe in their Cherokee ancestor and why the truth behind that story is actually far more complex, more powerful, I think, than we give it credit for. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero. Thank you so much for being with me here on my channel where we talk about American identity and family stories. I have been seeing countless stories again where people are genuinely shocked that they thought they had significant Native American ancestry. I'm going to test come back, nothing. So I want to talk about why these Cherokee grandmas find their way into so many family trees where they don't belong. But first, I want to show you a post on Reddit where this conversation was just happening very recently. Okay, so at the time of recording this video at the end of April, this was just 3 days ago. It already has 683 comments. It's on the Ancestry DNA sub, which I love keeping up with. I'm going to just read what happened when they took a DNA test. This person said, when I was growing up, I was told that my great grandma was Native and African. I always took so much pride in having Native blood. I'm a very spiritual person and I've connected it to my African and Native roots in many ways. I'm going to skip down a little bit. I even named my son Sager, Sage for short. My African side is extremely powerful, but the coming together of Native and African amplified that power I felt. I told many people I was Native, white, and African. Then I took a DNA test. I have 0 to 1% Native in me. I'm mostly white, which just pet peeve of mine, like white's not a thing, like yellow's not a thing, red's not a thing, brown's not a thing, black's not a thing. Like, I'm curious, maybe like English, Irish, I don't know. 38% African and 0 to 1% Native. Okay, so that's actually skewing, I'm guessing, European, like mostly European. That's interesting. Now I feel like a fraud, like a part of my life was a lie and I don't know how to come back from that. Oof. So my question is this. Why are so many people lied to about having native DNA? What is the point in it? We're going to talk about that point. We're going to talk about it. Why have these stories been passed down to many, so many, specifically African American communities? This person is right on track. It's become a meme and a joke to talk about how Black parents lie about being native. I've heard back on the day some used to do it to avoid harsher racism, so maybe it got passed down that way. It also happened to white communities. I have seen blonde hair, blue eyed people claiming to be Native American, which they also could be. I think, I mean, I'm not the identity gatekeeper. Like, however you want to identify, you identify as. Um, I know that there are many people who are a part of the Cherokee Nation who are blonde hair, blue eyed, and they are connected to that. So why is this a thing? And I want to add that the family member that told me this was my African dad, not my white mom. Okay. All right. So let's look at some of the comments and then we'll hop over. This person kind of followed up and said, yeah, I was told my great grandfather was indigenous, likely Ojibwe. I think that's in Minnesota. Turns out he was a Norwegian immigrant. No idea how this lie came to be. That's interesting. This other person said, I'm a blonde, blue-eyed milk color. I'm guessing they don't mean chocolate milk. I was told my great-grandma was full Navajo. Got really into Native history, Navajo myths, Native art. DNA says I'm 100% Northern European. No explanation for why that story got told. I would love to know how it got started since it couldn't been to have dodged racism. Oh, and genealogically, I'm 6+ generations Kentuckian. So Cherokee could have made sense, but Navajo. It's interesting. This person says always the great grandmother without fail. Okay, so let's talk about that. Before we can figure out why it's always the grandmother. There's a really good reason for it. We gotta rewind and go back to one of the most traumatic chapters in American racial history. This was the forced removal of Native peoples known as the Trail of Tears. So thousands of Cherokee, along with many other tribes, were driven from their homelands. Many died from disease, exhaustion, and other brutal conditions. Families were scattered. When people get displaced, when records are lost, what fills in the gaps? Oral history, stories. And sometimes those stories over time, like a game of telephone, if you ever played telephone before, can shift, can change. It's so crazy when you play telephone. You feel like you're speaking so clearly, and then the person 5 or 6 people down says something insane. You're like, what idiot in between you and me like jumbled that? But even celebrities and politicians have claimed Cherokee ancestry. Johnny Cash, Johnny Depp, Bill Clinton, Miley Cyrus, and remember Elizabeth Warren. During her presidential run, she had the claim of Cherokee heritage, and that kind of sparked a national debate because she had used that when she was getting into law school, and then a DNA test suggested she was anything between like 1/32 and I'm gonna break this down, 1 out of 1024th Native ancestry, at least according to NPR. I'm going to do the math and find out what percentage that is when I'm editing this. But whether it's true or not, public identification with Cherokee roots has been a conversation that is still going. But then there's this other thing. It was a 19th century trend where European Southerners started claiming distant Cherokee lineage, especially in the 1840s and 1850s as the Civil War was looming. And in part, this was a way to root themselves as like native born sons and daughters of the South and kind of claiming ownership over the South. And this is going to bring us to a harder truth, and this is what we kind of touched on in the comment section, which is that claiming native ancestry was sometimes used to hide African ancestry. I've encountered so many stories in my research where the Indian princess in the family turned out to be an African ancestor. And in the South, terms like Cherokee princess or Indian princess were sometimes also derogatory. They were kind of like derogatory terms for a light-skinned mixed-race woman, kind of like the term high yellow can be used, or red bone. And generations later, families may have passed on these labels without understanding the original intent behind it. But why princess? Like, this is the one where it's like, okay, maybe someone thinks they're Cherokee, maybe they're trying to hide other ancestry, they're claiming Cherokee, but why a princess? Why is it always a Cherokee princess? Well, I read something super interesting. There was an indigenous writer who explained that the princess part of the name likely came from a flawed translation of chief's daughter. But Cherokee chiefs weren't kings, so you wouldn't have a princess, right, without a king. And so the chief's daughter was more like, it was like a mayor's daughter or something. It wasn't like royalty, where now we have the prince and the princess and the queen. But in the early 20th century, princess also became a term of endearment, much like annoying people call each other babe today. Similarly, many Cherokee women were also called Rose, even if that wasn't their name, like Cherokee Rose or something. It was just a term of endearment. Sometimes I think what's happened to people's family trees also is what you have a nickname or a term of endearment kind of turns into like ethnicity, but that was not the intent behind it. The other thing is, it's possible that the ancestor that someone believes is Cherokee was actually African American or both. They could be mixed race, right? It doesn't diminish the story. And I think sometimes, especially when we're getting ready to take DNA tests to kind of blow the lid off what's going on with our family, we need to ask not just, was the story true in our family? Because yes or no, right? But maybe asking the question, what was the story protecting? What was the story trying to preserve? And how can we honor the truth in our family now that we know it? That's why I always say, do not stop at DNA tests. Reach out to your family, write down the stories, compare them to records, learn how to do the research yourself because you can definitely do it. I learned how to do it. I'm not a genealogist. I'm not even really good at it, but I care about it. And so I've been learning. And so I have some free downloads for you if you are interested in starting to research your family story. If you want to interview family members, it's free. It's at nytonashville.com. Go ahead and download them. There's like 3 or 4 really pretty PDFs I made. I want you to have them. Go download them. Let me know if the Cherokee princess story appeared in your family. Was it there? It was in mine. But it turned out we did have indigenous ancestry, but it was Choctaw. But we also had African ancestry. And so I think the Cherokee thing was more born out of laziness, of just not really knowing or caring what it was, but just, it's Cherokee. But I'm always curious to hear your stories because I think every discovery, whether it's expected or not, really, it brings us closer to understanding who we are, not just as people, but as a country. I really think we're at this moment where there's so much information, and I really hope that we take advantage of being able to dig in a way that the previous generations just were not able to do. So whatever you find, just remember the truth is more powerful and more beautiful than any legend, and it's how you got here. Thank you so much for being with me, and we'll talk soon. Over the last 2 years, I've been telling the stories that often get ignored. But lately, I've been facing an uphill battle behind the scenes of each video. My videos are getting flagged by YouTube when all I'm doing is sharing real history. If these stories have ever resonated with you or given you a new perspective, grab some Be a Good Ancestor merch and help me keep this channel going. Check out nytonashville.com.